there's so many things that you need to listen to, and you're so open-minded, which makes for great content, dare I say it. So
I mean, you can say great content. That's cool.
It's certainly great content.
You're also awesome at it. You're really good at it.
I try very hard.
Like, your vibe is very enthusiastic, just like,
yeah,
but just like catching your like your heart and your mind is super easy and really enjoyable.
Oh, I appreciate that. I really do. You know, for all the suffering I went through in opera, I really do love this new life. It's beautiful, and I feel like I had to go through so many like hurdles to get here. And I feel like no one's taken this away from me. You know what I mean? Like, I really, really love it.
Yeah, but also I think that your path, but also the ways in which you shared parts of your story, that's got repercussions and like ripple effects that I'm sure you know about some of them, and I'm sure that you don't know about some of them.
Yeah, I've noticed some, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's just a long legacy there, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot, and the more we talk about it, the more we can like be intentional about what parts of our tradition we pass on and which parts we don't.
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
But we got to talk about it together. You know, this.
Yeah, it's a problematic thing. It's there's just so many things in the way that you like navigate, you know, sort of the ugly parts, but also the positive parts. And every industry has it. Gaming has the same thing. You know, there's the ugly fan base that's toxic and unhealthy and, you know, yelling at each other, but it's no different than classical music, really. Yeah. The similarities are crazy. But hang on, we're already recording, but maybe Nathan could keep some of that in, because that's a good conversation too. And a little bit of ego stroking for me is always nice. So just kidding.
It's up to you, Nathan.
Yeah, it's up to you, Nathan. And they're going to be like, why is Nathan so front and center in this interview? No, it's just the things you hear, man.
Why isn't Nathan more front and center in this interview?
He works so damn hard. He edits this down. Hey, everybody. I'm really excited because Kathy Kelly is back. My first reappearance of a guest. I have a lot of interesting tracks, both of your suggestions and my suggestions. I'm going to try to take her on a little bit of a journey here. Some of my favorite tunes, some tunes from the older days, since I had some interesting comments that were like, well, video game music is Mega Man and Golden Axe and Super Mario. And yes, that's true, but we also have to look at where we are today. So I'm going to try to do a whole bunch of different things, lots of copyright unfriendly things here. So check out that full video at Marco Meatball VODs. Kathy, hi. It's so great to see you again. How are you?
It's great to see you too. I'm so psyched to be back. And I'm psyched to see where you're going to take me today, because I know you kept it like on the down low for grandma last time.
Yeah, there's maybe some heavy metal in this one. We'll have to see. You
did allow me, however, to coin the term badass Latin, which I see has had some resonance.
Loved it.
And
yeah.
I feel like we need to just make that an industry-wide standard.
Badass Latin, I think. Yeah. So now every time anybody ever hears Latin, just tune into that. So we're going to start off. Yeah, we're going to start off with some. Believe they call this white singing, which is a term in Eastern Slavic. Actually, what do they call that? The white voice, where it's like the difference between the chiaro and the scudo, where you voce. I forget. It's the Pavarotti. There was an interview.
Voce bianco.
Voce bianco. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's like rather than
rather than
the thing,
rather than the sort of like whole thing.
That's called chiaroscuro as well, which is light and dark. Ideally, you have the perfect balance of the two, but let's be real, who really does? Some people do, but I didn't. I was definitely
all just fancy code switching.
Yeah, actually. So this is actually Silver for Monsters from The Witcher 3. It is made by a Polish company, CD Projekt Red, and this is Marcin Przewowicz. Fantastic music here, and I'm really curious to hear. It's very well. You'll hear it.
I love that.
Isn't it? It's so raw, right?
It's so, but like, okay, there are allusions to another kind of classical music, right? Like classical Indian music, and like use of raga or raga like composition, but then like kind of unashamedly walking over into something way more I don't know, visceral and sort of unschooled. Instead of super schooled singing, just kind of like it's way more metal. And I mean, like the visual art is also so metal.
Right? Yeah. It's interesting you say that too. I remember I took a folklore class, which I've always actually loved folklore music because it's this type of thing that we don't transcribe, right? It's not something that's passed down. It's something that you sort of, well, it is, I'm sorry. It's not something, it's something that's passed down. It's not something that's transcribed. And this has a little bit of that feeling to it where it's very, 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 almost like it's improvised. And it doesn't have any of that standard sort of like, well, it's written down and it's very, very thorough and it's very, very polished. It's the complete opposite of it in a lot of ways.
I don't know very much about classical, the classical traditions of the Indian subcontinent. I mean, I could probably like pass a test writing a definition of what a raga is, but it's pretty tight. I mean, the amount of knowledge of these cells of rhythm and cells of melodic gestures, it's a pretty extensive knowledge. It feels, I think when you know a little bit about it, it can feel like improvised and kind of random, but I think there's much less of a random factor than we think. But again, it's going to be another 2 hours like this with you, Marco, where where I come in as somebody who knows a lot about a tiny little corner of the
a little subject.
And then I just am exposed to how much more stuff there is that I don't know about, which is thrilling.
I know, it's a great thing, right? And it's so funny that you mentioned the raga in India, because actually I believe that this is much more of a Slavic sound, or like an Eastern European sound. But I think theoretically they borrow from the same, I feel like that sort of improvised raw quality can be derived for both sectors of this sort of like, non-classical sort of perspective.
Yeah, maybe I'm just saying raga because there's a sitar involved.
Is it a sitar? I don't even know. Is it a hurdy-gurdy? I don't even know. I don't even actually know.
It's like a sitar to me.
Huh. Someone will tell us in the comments.
Is it a sitar or a zither? Is it Middle Europe or Middle India? It's cool. Whatever it is, it's amazing.
Whatever it is, it's cool. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I guess we'll stay in this vein of like hardcore sort of different stuff. And I'm sort of surprised I'm playing this for you, but I heard it the other day, and it's wild. And I wanted to just sort of deviate you from where the safety net that we were in last time.
Now, when you say you heard it the other day, does it mean that it was composed like within the
No. I never listened to it, and people had said you should listen to this because it features a choir of metal singers.
Yes. Okay.
So this is from Doom Eternal. It's called En Tuk, which I believe means rip and tear. So we'll see what your perspective is on this one.
I already love this.
kind of intense.
I love it. It makes me like Hell Marines, you know? Yeah. I don't know, but I've been told.
Well, there's 3 more minutes of it. So.
Sweet. Strap in. I need another song before I forget.
So apparently this wasn't in the game. Yeah, can we count that as music? Do you think?
I would say yes. I would say yes. I love compositions like this that are essentially like layers of noise, because it's like there are visual art pieces that are like this too, that look like unorganized, just like chaos, everything in. It's really interesting when people layer sound like this. What what gets obscured, but then what starts to emerge out of it, and the way that they can make all the textures kind of confusing and then lead your ear to like
something
one
else.
particular spectrum of pitches or to like a completely new rhythmic cell. You know how like the beginning of this is like En Tuk, En Tuk, and then it all gets obscured, and then another sort of 3-beat thing, but it's a little bit slower than the original one, and you don't really kind of know how you got there. It's almost kind of weirdly calming. It is like once you get to the highest level of chaos and you don't know what the station is anymore, you kind of I don't know. I sort of chill in that. Weirdly. Also, I just like the whole Rammstein vibe at the beginning. And I was amused at one point imagining like the recording of this and what it would have been like in the cafeteria with like on breaks.
Yeah. Hey, how are you?
They go up and they're like, I would like a hamburger. Or they all like the really high voices, like how do they talk?
It's so funny because I hadn't actually heard that all the way through, and I had sort of a visceral reaction to it, much in the same way that I did when I first heard Salome or some Strauss or even Benjamin Britten. And it's interesting how I think a lot of us, when we hear something that we instantly are like, we try our best to tune away and tune out. But when you lean in, now I love Aria Naxos. I played the first like 10 measures one time. Like I listened to the recording as I was learning something, and I turned it off right away because I was like, you know what? That's not for me. And then when I finally heard it in its entirety and I made sense of it from a I don't know if it was just time or age or whatever, that I suddenly felt, oh, this is amazing. And so it's interesting how our gut reactions are not necessarily, they don't always serve us, you know, to like shy away from things.
It's almost always worth it to just give yourself over to what the sound world is and find out where that's going to go. I grew up in a town with a little college in it, and they did this piece like in the mid 70s that had like indeterminate pitches in it, and like the choir would start on one set of pitches and then gradually bend down to another set of pitches like over the space of 10 to 15 seconds. So everything was kind of like, also from the orchestra. But there was a kids choir involved in this. So they picked like 12 of us so that we could be like the weird little children sound in the middle of that. You know, like,
wow.
While other like weird stuff was happening. And it was, I mean, I wasn't old enough yet to have an opinion about it. I thought it was really hard and really weird, but also like really cool. And it was also interesting to be like a kid in a bunch of adults and to realize like this is really hard for everybody. Like the energy in the room was like so amped trying to do it. So I'm always reminded of that experience.
Wow, who knew that En Tuk would throw you back to your child years? But that I love it.
And
also, I love it.
And also just to Rammstein. I mean,
yeah. That's right.
Who bist? Who is, you know.
Did you listen to Rammstein when you were in Germany there for a spell?
No, not in Germany, but later. I discover all cool music really through my husband, who is much cooler than me. So usually he has to bring stuff home, but
no, well, now you can bring him En Tuk and let him know.
I will. He will be impressed.
Okay, we'll shift gears from that. So let's go to something. Okay. So I played for you last time. I played you Die Midsommernacht Fantasie from Genshin Impact. One of the things that are sort of interesting about this game and a few others that will be on here and in general is that they're called gacha games, and gacha games are what they sound like. They're essentially it's gambling because the you spend money to get certain characters, and the problem is that you're not guaranteed to have a character. So there's a lot of folks that really hate this style of game because of there are predatory aspects, especially when it's geared towards younger folks and children and things.
Exactly. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. So there are predatory aspects.
Yeah, so there are predatory aspects of it that certainly are a reason for people to not want to play these games and
Gotcha.
be sort of against it altogether. However, so Genshin Impact is one of those games. However, what I really love about Genshin is that, and I may have mentioned this last time we chatted, but each region has a musical soundscape of the actual region in the real world. So for instance, in this particular case, this is the Divine Damsel of Devastation from Genshin Impact, and this is sung by a true Chinese opera singer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when this came out, there was a lot of comments ranged, because this is actually, so it's a evolution of the culture of this place is called Liyue, and it takes place in like ancient China, and so they had traditional Chinese opera singing, and of course it was met with mixed reactions due to people not being understanding. It's sort of similar to what we were just talking about, but let's take a listen and then we'll have a little chat about it.
这里本该接近尾声，但今日我再添一笔，唱与诸位听。曲高为别人不识，自有知音何情词？红英烈烈见了心，只知不操心。彼时鹤归，茫茫天地无依靠，孤身离去。今日再会，新朋旧友坐满堂，共聚此时。
I think that is cool. I really like that.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because not only is it with like these rock elements, right, but it also has the erhu and these very, very ancient traditional Chinese approaches to singing and music. And it's so interesting that they chose to do something that would maybe not be perceived in the correct light in a modern time frame for a Western audience and for the world at large, and yet they chose to say no, this is who we are, this is a part of our culture, let's celebrate that and bring it to life. And I think it's it makes you wonder, like, as I was watching this, what I wanted to, your perspective, not only on the singing and everything, but also like, wouldn't it be crazy if operas started using more modern instruments and we started composers really started shifting into something like this that we could do with Italian romanticism and stuff. You know what I mean? I feel like opera struggles sometimes to evolve, if that makes sense.
Totally. I mean, gosh, you open a lot of topics with that really astute sentence. I mean, anytime you're talking about trying to, the question is, what do you do with these art forms from the past, right? And I think either if there's a spectrum of response from we try to preserve them and like preserve everything about the conditions that that supported their creation and supported their sort of heyday, or we translate them. We take that art form and try to bring it into our world with our technologies and our sensibilities and our language. Like either one of those is a creative venture, right? Because like take anything written in the 19th century, 18th century. How far can you go with authenticity if you're playing in a theater with air conditioning and stable temperature and electric lights?
That's right.
And you can even get really extreme with it, but there's a whole continuum of how authentic you're being, and in the end, all of those decisions are creative and imaginative because you can't go back there. You don't know what it was like. So that's one way of creativity. And another way of creativity is to say, like, there are some barriers that we used to have that we don't have anymore.
Right.
Like we've got the technology to put together combinations of instruments that never would have worked in an acoustic setting. So like open the doors and maybe it won't be exactly that anymore, but it's going to be that practice brought into this time. And anywhere along that, I think there's possibility, anywhere along that spectrum is the possibility for like hugely creative engagement with the art form. But I do think, back to your original comment, I think it is hard for classical music to spend time on. I don't remember which side of the spectrum I had my hands on. If this is the old way and this is the new way, it's hard to go over here because I think there's a whole like classist and racist element to the and like sexist element to the preservation of Western classical music. There's a strong element to a lot of that and to a lot of the funding of it that has made us for a couple generations now, that community spend a lot of time holding the line against things that they're not. Like we're not electronic, we're not digital, we're not virtual. So that's where part of the struggle comes, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
it's a huge eye roll thing too. It's like, because it's like, man, it's so silly because if you look at, everything you said, especially the socio-political aspects that but if you also look at like, I think it's really funny that we have this reservation, especially when you look at people like Igor Stravinsky that were neoclassical, that we put the word neo in front of that stuff, and it was truly like that was an evolution of Mozart, right? And we understand that all the work that Stravinsky was doing, where certainly the Rake's Progress had those elements of Mozart and things, but that was progressive for that time period. So it's weird that in this current time period we are almost afraid to be progressive again. Maybe I'm also generalizing, of course, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of progression happening. It's just that there's there isn't a big machinery and channel behind it yet. I mean, that's, what do we do with all these big theaters? Like, what do we do? What do we do? I mean, that's a big question too, right? We've got so much repertoire that was created during a certain economic way of putting it all together.
Yeah.
How do we keep that? How do we keep that kind of performance possible? Can we keep it possible? Can we keep it possible worldwide? Should we? I mean, those are really scary questions to contemplate because that has to do with people's livelihood,
the business of classical music.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, that's complicated.
In an ideal world, you could be experimental and do the things that, video games have the benefit of being in all digital media that then eventually gets transposed to orchestra if they're lucky. And oftentimes it doesn't even see that, which is something that it would be amazing if we could change that but that's another, threshold of challenge where our is an audience of donors and sponsors going to be like, yeah, you want Monster Hunter? The hell's that? Sure. It's not, so there's a threshold that I think will always, it's an interesting conversation that has no end, but it's certainly.
Well, I feel like we're at the beginning of it, though. I mean, I feel like music in general is sort of heading back from the end of a big pendulum swing. I'm using my hands again, but if the 80s were like the height of specialization, like pick your lane in Tower Records, pick your major at conservatory, like, are you a classical musician or are you a rock musician or are you a composer or are you not a composer? If that was the height of that, like we're definitely heading back in a different direction. So who knows what it all looks like in 10 years, in 20 years with like funding and how musicians connect with one another.
That's true. We have no clue.
That's right.
So we're going to go back in time. Actually, speaking of back in time, this is a twofer. This is a 2-for-1. So I wanted to take you all the way back to the Legend of Zelda main theme song. And then I wanted to
heard of the Legend of Zelda.
You have?
I've heard of it.
Okay. Wow.
I've not played it. Don't know anything about it.
The very newest one, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, recently came out about a month ago now. No, by the time this is out, maybe 2 months. So I wanted to play you Tears of the Kingdom, I said. So I wanted you to hear the original main theme song by Koji Kondo, and then I wanted you to hear this main theme and just how different those are. So I'll do a minute of, they're both pretty short, but so I will, we'll do a 2-for-1 here. I'll send this over to
When was the original main theme composed?
19...
In the last century.
Yeah. Whoa, when was the Zelda main theme composed? I'm sorry. That's a good question. It looks like, 1986. So Zelda has been around for, 1986. So it's always fun to see how things evolve. So we'll listen to like the first minute of this. You'll get a sense of what it is, and then we'll switch to the newest one. Yeah, so I mean, this is like the classic, one of the classic video game songs.
Yeah, I mean, like its proximity to Star Wars is very obvious. Also, those are the synthesizer sounds of my youth.
Yeah.
Like, it makes me want to like take a curling iron to my bangs again.
I mean, it's what's incredible is just how different things are, because if we pivot to this, like, I'll send this link over to you. If we pivot over to this newest version, you have glimpses of it, but it's obvious how things have changed in the 30 some odd years.
I was not expecting that. Okay, saxophone.
I know. So it has the same sort of skeleton, but vastly different, you know?
Totally. It's such a, I'm struck over and over again in these scores how interesting the combination can be of instrumental combinations that I don't expect, that are not sort of traditional at all, and yet that can happen within a very traditional and recognizable sort of like form and vibe.
Yeah, isn't that
like that's made for a symphony orchestra concert, right? They must have Legend of Zelda concerts.
Of course they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. Like, also how it exudes this feeling of strength and confidence, but also like there's a little bit of danger, but like, you know, but it's like there's such a like a confident, like I got this kind of vibe and energy to it that it's just lovely, you know. It almost like it's too happy for like a standard programmed classical music symphony night, you know what I mean? Like I can't think of like a happy tune off the top of my head that I'd be like, yeah, put that with Zelda, you know what I mean?
Well, you just kind of identified something that you just kind of like coalesced one of the reactions I was having to it, which is that not all the instrumental combinations are like heroic. You know, a saxophone is never heroic. No, whatever that cool kind of like, I think Asian instruments, I don't know enough about them.
I think it was an erhu.
Yeah, but like that's not something that I perceive anyway as part of that like heroic Star Warsy sound world. Then so much of the rest of it is like, you know, here's our show, you know, and very sort of like big sweep, big emotion, and kind of rhythmic gestures, that have that sort of like here's the hero or the heroine, and here's the story. Yeah. So yeah,
it's good stuff, right?
Yeah, cool.
Continuing the education. All right, we'll stay in this like 8-bit territory of your youth, but actually, so this was the Pixel remaster. But so something that people wanted me to show you, which makes sense, in Final Fantasy VI, there is an opera house scene, and it is what it is. It's an opera within an opera. This particular song is called Aria di mezzo carattere.
Okay.
And I'm giving you the Pixel remaster versus the traditional one that has the 8-bit sound quality to it. So there are multiple different languages. They've produced several different versions of it and so on and so forth. But it's funny because this is like all like, I think in the game, I haven't gotten to this part in Final Fantasy VI, but there is a giant octopus that has been chasing you around. And so at one point it falls down from the chandelier, very Phantom of the Opera like, and you have to fight it on the opera stage. But so there's this like 10-minute moment where our heroes are playing this pastiche of an opera. And this is composed by Nobuo Uematsu. And so this is the Aria di mezzo carattere. And I'll be curious to know, you know, maybe I should give you the original one.
Okay.
I should give you the original. I'm sorry.
I never thought of the territory of my youth, by the way, as 8-bit, but I'm very intrigued with that now.
18-bit and 16-bit. Oh, God. Okay. So 8-bit graphics refers to the capability of every pixel to use 8 bits for storing the amount of colors that can be displayed. So then it was 16-bit, and then eventually it went to 3D, and now whatever we're in now, which is like CGI and stuff. Or not CGI. I don't know what I'm talking about. But so this is the opera scene from the original Super Nintendo. This is the original Super Nintendo version. So think Dancing Mad that I showed you the other time, and then this is from the same game, but just earlier on. The harp.
She never stopped.
So you could pick the line.
Okay, gotcha. Amazing. I've been at oh my God.
You picked the lyric.
I love her walking around in the set. What's that? This is everything.
The French horn there, counter melody.
Right, the duet, yeah. Classic love contra duet. Oh, that was quick up the stairs. Oh, here we go. The jump, is this like a toss-up thing? It's like a very 80s stage.
Yeah.
I like this one. Goodbye, Maria.
Isn't that great? It's got Lucia all over it too. It's so
Oh
funny.
my god. But also just like an 80s video game composer's idea of what opera sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, da, 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 just like
I know. It's the slowest aria ever written possible.
oh my god.
But I will say that some of the comments that I've read, you know, that piece did actually propel people to go to the opera. Younger kids that ever like, what is that? And then it motivated them to go. So it's sort of it's like a crazy thing that even exists. I don't think there is any other. I mean, there is like other like funny, like there's a song about poo that's sung operatically, you know, in Conquer's Bad Fur Day. He literally, it's like, I don't know what the song is, but it's about poo. And so that's funny, you know, like, but that's the only serious operatic performance in a video game ever.
Wow.
From 1990 something.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, if it got people interested in the opera, that's an interesting thing to note, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I think it's cool when people are curious.
At the very least. Although I have to say, as time has gone on, I mean, I grew up with this soundscape, and I have to say that I feel that is the true history of video game music, and I think it's important. However, I wouldn't go back. I'm really grateful that we live in a world where we do get fully orchestrated performances, and even synthesizer now. Yes, you can hear when the strings are fake, and like some that can be a little bit grating. However, we're lucky that we live in the soundscape where it really does feel like a true, like we just can play more, you know?
Right. Well, and more people can play more. Like it's easier to try, you know, it's easier to get access to the tools where you can try.
Well, oh, that's a great point. And that's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. So keeping in that vein, but in a modern way, I wanted to share with you the song from Undertale. We played Megalovania. Oops, oh god, I'm two things at once. I shared with you Megalovania last time from Undertale, and this is actually the title song from Undertale called Undertale. Okay. And it's beautiful, and there's a moment in it that I won't spoil, but I actually wept when I'd never cried at a video game ever before. Wow. And there was this moment, I think it just hit me right at the same time, where you look at this mirror and it says, after all this time, it's still you. And it's weird how you play a game that feels kind of silly, and then you arrive at this moment where you suddenly understand what it's all about. And it was like such a fascinating moment of understanding the audience, almost breaking the fourth wall and stuff. So it's really beautiful.
I have a question for you. Is this also older, this game?
No, and so the reason why I wanted to,
the logo is
I know. So it's in a traditional. So this plays. It's a play on how the Final Fantasy series was played, or any role playing game RPG was played. But this came out, I believe, 8 years ago. Okay. So it's modern, but it has that sound quality. It's such a human piece. It's weird. Now, it's weird because it's like 6 minutes and 20 seconds, and I don't know if you felt that 6 minutes, but it's one of these pieces that. Well, what's your take on that? And then I'll share my take.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of a loop in a way. It's kind of like hold music. It's like I wish hold music was that interesting, but it's. But I'm surprised by the sound world, like
right.
the slightly like detuned nature of the sound world.
Mm-hmm.
Tuning is imperfect in the beginning, which is interesting and kind of it's like a way simpler version of the really noisy thing you played earlier. The things about the detuning that disturb me, they go on long enough that you kind of accept them. Mm-hmm. And then by that time you've kind of accepted the repetitive nature of the harmony and the sort of like loop of the sequence. And it becomes almost meditative after a while. And then some of the other string sounds, I mean, it all feels like very old-fashioned sounds to me. Yeah. But some of it sounds like the backwards string sounds that the Beatles used to use. And it's, there are just a couple of surprising things in there. But it's an interesting thing because for me, I have a very like emotional response to it. Like it feels very warm and fuzzy. And during this moment, you're learning about the history of one of the characters, and it's actually very tragic. And you learn about the suffering of these people and these people that you meet along the way. And for whatever reason, it really reminds me of my relationship with my father. Well, obviously, like, you know, my father passed almost 2 years ago now. And for whatever reason, this particular track really, it's odd because it's like, is it the best choice to play for someone who doesn't know video games? I don't know, but I have such an emotional response to it that it inevitably, it's like one of these things that like it feel like it has to be shared because it's just like so heartfelt, even though it's a loop, you know what I mean? It's weird. But I think that's where the theater aspect, the theater and storytelling aspect of video games really oversects with like other theater worlds. There are individual like monologues or musical moments from opera or music theater or whatever, that because of the context of the whole thing, and sometimes because of the context of your life when you hear it for the first time, they're just emblazoned on your whole body.
Yeah.
And you can say to somebody else, you've got to hear this. And then somebody else will be like, oh, yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. Huh. And you're like, yeah, but you see, there was this whole thing, and that's
did you get it? No.
Yeah. So I mean, it's some things like slap or rock or are beautiful or out when you take them out of that context, and some of them are like super informed by the context of the game, and by the content and by your own knowledge of it, right?
Right. It's an interesting thing too. I mean, because it really does speak to can a piece of music be beautiful outside of context? Yes. Like I told another person that came on, Robert Tui, I told him, you know, I'd listened to Butterfly, and I said, well, that's beautiful. Okay. Yeah. Love to. It's a little boring, a little long, 16 minutes. And then I saw it in context and I was like, oh my God, this is one of the most incredible operas I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's funny how your perspective shifts if you're able to really like latch on to something visually, and how we essentially need this this duality, because music is beautiful on its own, but maybe there's a reason why sometimes people go to the symphony and they hear the simple music and you look out and there's people asleep because they need that visual element too. You know, it's a weird thing.
Right.
It's a weird thing. All right.
And it's all, you put those elements together and it makes something else.
Yeah.
You know? So you know what that something else is. I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you're open-minded enough to at least hear the.
There's also just the weirdness too, like that every like fan or passionate person experiences when you're like, you've got to hear this.
I know.
And I mean, sometimes you're met with like, that's awesome. And sometimes you're met with like, What is that?
Yeah. All right. We'll shift gears here. Ooh, what do I want to do? Yeah. Let's do this. Speaking of shifting gears, this is called Battle from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Torna. And well, I'm not going to explain any of it.
So I feel like I already have certain expectations.
Right. Battle, of course.
Right?
Of course. Well, let's see if your expectations will be circumvented.
If it starts with Erwa again, I'm going to be really surprised.
If it starts with the Aru, yeah. No.
Yeah, Arhu, sorry.
No, I don't. No, there's no Aru.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, kinda. Yeah, that's true. That one's a really long one, so we'll stop there.
Well, like I like everything about that. First of all, it's super piano heavy, so like I'm all in from the beginning. And then like, you know, great hard to play together unison lines. Like this would be really like challenging and satisfying to execute live. You know, you just need a whole bunch of people who played really well and had great time, and like that would be fun. That's a score that makes me think I want to be part of the live performance of that. I want to be the super cool pianist.
It's so effervescent, isn't it? It's just like, but it's a battle theme, right? So like it doesn't. It's just so fun.
Yeah, well, I sort of like that too. Battling is awesome. Let's do it.
Let's go kick some ass. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But then on the flip side, you'll get themes like this one that are, this one. Here it is. People will not be happy. So there's two pieces back to back that I will play for you that are the opposite of what we just listened to. This one's actually, this is a game that by the time we upload this video, it will have released. It comes out next week. It's called Find the Flame from Final Fantasy 16. And
amazing.
Yeah.
There's been 16 Final Fantasies?
So there's Final Fantasy's been around for 35 years. This is the 35th anniversary this year currently. And
well, none of them are final.
The first one was. And then they were like, oh, it did well. And then they just kept the name and so on and so forth. But this is, I think, Game of Thrones, but with like giant monsters. And that's pretty much Final Fantasy 16. And it's very hyped right now. So.
what I hope is that soon the University of Michigan marching band will be doing this like in their halftime shows. Wouldn't it sound awesome?
Yeah, it would.
Like with like a giant university marching band brass section and
just
and
ripping. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
It feels like that piece is an instant classic. It just got released on 6/9.
It feels like it's written like that's a composer campaigning to be put on a video game night with a live symphony orchestra and chorus.
Well, Masayoshi Soken is a very beloved. I played To the Edge for you from Final Fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it is like the span of things that he knows how to do is just so diverse, and because this takes place in like a medieval setting, we're really leaning on sort of this organic sound quality, and it's just to go all the way back to Final Fantasy VII and the original ultimate boss battle theme, and if you want to call it, what was it? Badass Latin. Yes. This is a One Winged Angel from the movie of Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children, but it's pretty much the same as the game version, minus the fact that it was written in a MIDI soundscape and not in the orchestration soundscape. But this is probably the if Imperial March to Star Wars, Sephiroth's theme is to video games in terms of like a badass villain theme. Cool. So we'll listen to this whole baby because it is chef's kiss. Yeah, I have very clear memories of playing this and my mother telling me to turn it off, and I was like, no, I can't, I'm so close to the end, because it's like the last boss. Okay. Pretty right as spring.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's this version. I actually never heard that. But that's
piano, of course.
version.
Like,
It goes. Switch back. That's funny.
what?
Yeah, this version does this. Yeah.
The orchestra's back.
I'd not heard that version.
That
was intense.
Is bonkers.
Right. It's like it's the thing that video games can do, right?
Yes. Yeah. It starts off like you said, sounding like very much influenced by Stravinsky, and then suddenly like some Norwegian metal band shows up and you're like, where did you guys come from? And
they're like, hold on. It's like straight out Aria on Altoxos, right?
Yeah. But seriously fun, right? It's just
Well, and this boss theme is just so incredibly epic. And like for any person that heard this when it first came out, it was just like, what? Because you fight the first version of this Sephiroth and you think to yourself, okay, I beat the final boss. And then he comes out with like 8 angel wings and he does a nuclear bomb blast and you think that you're dead because he's like the ultimate evil. And
is that why that little carnival music is playing?
I think so. It's like a crazy masquerade or like a crazy carnival where it's just like you never know what's coming around the bend, and it's just
wow.
So
yeah, it feels very crazy. It feels very like madness.
Yeah, I do love that it has this very distinct Stravinsky vibe to it, even though it's like a modern rendition of it. And again, that composer is not classically composed.
But then also just like drums for days. I mean, it feels like Led Zeppelin suddenly showed up with like somebody who likes to hit things.
Yeah, that version is nuts. I love it.
Yeah.
So this next theme is actually, oh, hold on, what's happening? Sorry. This next theme is Malzeno's theme from Monster Hunter Sunbreak, and Malzeno is actually designed to be all the monsters are based off of the main monsters, I should say, are based off of what's that term for the horror movie monsters? There's like a term for like Frankenstein and Dracula and werewolf person, and I forget what the terminology is, but Malzeno is based off of Dracula.
Okay.
So I'm curious if what you'll be able to hear sonorally. Maybe I shouldn't have told you that, so I could have surprised you, but.
That's cool. That's big energy right out of the gate. And the organ like puts it firmly into like music of the night land, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're not thinking specifically Dracula, it's like Phantom of the Opera, dark arts, you know, like church music perverted and made more cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which happens all the time in video games.
Death. Yeah, totally.
As it's an absolute banger. There's not much to say besides how great it is. It's a really good piece. So you're a pianist, of course, and so I can't let you leave without playing you at least one famous piano piece that is beloved, and I've chosen Deepstone Lullaby.
Okay.
So Deepstone Lullaby is it's convoluted, but essentially Destiny is a space opera game, and there is a race of people in Destiny called Exos, and Exos are made in a lab, and they are robots, essentially robotic. They have a robotic. They're non-organic, and so this song supposedly is the last thing they hear before they are put into their deep sleep and they become this exo. Okay. So, and in the game, while you're doing this, you are literally walking on a satellite in space. It's it's very powerful. And you hear this speech about how this guy, Clovis Bray, is crazy. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's convoluted because it's very dense.
That's gorgeous. I love, like, that is like meditation zone right there. You know, especially with some of the inner, like, there you almost don't hear them. When at the beginning the piano is playing those big wide intervals, and he or she starts to add this sort of like boom, 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 like really tiny little subtle, like kind of not on the main beats of the structure, little sounds in there. It's just like the sound world is beautiful, but it's also just kind of designed to bring your blood pressure right down.
Yeah, I mean,
it feels big, you know.
Well, especially if it is this idea of a lullaby and what that represents, and I also really, it reminds me a lot of Elgar's Enigma variations.
Yeah.
Where Nimrod, especially, where it like soars near the middle, and you're kind of like, okay, where are we going? And then you finally arrive at this like sort of peak, and then it decays back down.
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, really beautiful. Wow.
Cool. They'll be happy to. Are you happy, Destiny fan?
Yeah.
Trying to like cover some of the stuff that people are like, how can you not cover this, you son of a bitch? You know, so this next one is from a game called NieR. And it's one of the most unique things I've ever heard. And this moment in the game is actually the moment I realized that I was playing something really, really special. It is actually it's called a beautiful song, and it's an opera boss, and it's a robot. Well, I forget how it works with the robots. It's been a while since I played it.
Okay.
It's an angry opera singer that just wants to be loved. And sung in a language called the Chaos language, which is an amalgamation of multiple different languages, and it's gibberish essentially, but it's not. It's the Chaos language.
Okay.
Is a singer. She's a fantastic singer, and essentially, yeah. We'll take a listen.
And she's angry.
And at this particular moment, yes, we are fighting this opera singer and
Amazing.
burning her to her eternal rest. So I should mention that there's also a second singer in there, Emmy Evans and Janique Nicole. So, and that's a duet. Actually, you can sort of hear that in a second. It almost sounds like she says, fa male qui nel cuore.
Almost. Yeah, I need to know more about the diction rules for chaos language. but I just love I love the whole visual, like the woman in the largest dress, the biggest veil. I mean,
so just robot body.
Yeah. Robot Lucia, just like robot Queen of the Night, just like killing everybody. Amazing.
There's something so powerful about this music, and I think the chaos language speaks to a larger idea that I think one of the barriers that I'm sure you can relate to this, like one of the barriers that people get in their heads about with opera is that like, oh, well, I don't understand it. But the fact of the matter is that like we don't need to understand lyrics in order to understand the feeling, you know. And I think something like the chaos language is a great indicator for that we can actually subsist off of not understanding something to appreciate it.
It's one of the things I like about opera is that it honors that moment where what you're expressing is beyond the understandability of your words. Mm-hmm. I mean, like text is important, and actually the fact that you go into ranges that are high enough that comprehensibility of the language begins to go down doesn't mean that the words aren't important. It just means that they've gone down in the priority list. And like this happens to people. This happens to people at moments of extreme emotion, or even not necessarily extreme emotion. Like my mom communicates like this all the time. You know, she'll say, "Did you see that flower by the side of the road? It was just, mm-hmm. You know, it's that moment of, I have this emotion that is, it's maybe not epic in the moment, but it is bigger than language. It's not enough for me to say, you know, the lilacs in the yard are so pretty. You know, what I mean to say is like, did you see them? They're, mm-hmm. Right? That's a little tiny opera moment.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're gigantic.
Right. And delayed and prolonged.
And in this game, they're also like fatal.
Yeah. It's a really interesting idea, though. I mean, it's if you were to pick between two things, this is for the next song, would you pick Viego, the Ruined King, or Gwen, the Hallowed Seamstress?
Hollowed like hollowed out, like with a spoon, or hallowed be thy name?
I don't know. Hollowed out, I think.
Okay. Well, I feel like we've seen a lot of like Ruined Kings.
So we want Gwen?
Yeah, let's do Gwen. Ooh. That's cool.
Mm.
Again, like what was the piece that you played for me last time? It was
Kindred?
No, it was something about ninjas. But that also
Oh,
had like great string writing.
the Duviri paradox. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Warframe.
Yeah, this also like really really cool like idiomatic great sounding string writing that like would be great on real strings.
Yeah, well, that was a pretty that was fully orchestrated. That was correct. That was not synthesized.
Yeah, it sure sounded like it was. And then like I'm always going to be drawn to something that has like big acoustic sensibilities like that, like beautiful guitar playing.
Yeah,
you know, cool piano playing, really intricate. You know, as a performer, you can kind of connect with what it would feel like to play that.
Yeah, right.
Which would just be like satisfying. And
the next song is Arthas, My Son. It's from World of Warcraft. You ever heard of World of Warcraft?
I sure have.
Of course, yeah.
I feel like I know people who have played that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
you're like, yes, you do. Yes.
It's a cultural phenomenon. I mean, surely.
It's like me saying, Lord of the Rings. I feel like I know people.
Do I know that? So, Arthas, My Son. So, if I remember correctly, and people will tell me, but there's two tracks that are side by side: Invincible and Arthas, My Son. This Arthas, I believe, this is the story of how Arthas became the Lich King. And his I forget, it's very complex, but so I'd be very curious to hear what you think.
That is like great. I mean that's just like great traditional writing, like super rich but super clear in texture, just like tight, complete understanding of big traditional orchestral sound. And I love the howling wind in it too.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed. Yeah, I mean it's obvious, but it may not be. You know what I mean? It's just so effective at like giving this feeling of like death and decay, and
Fun fact. I mean, you and I know this, but some of your listeners who haven't done a lot of live old style theater like opera might not know this. Theaters have had devices where they've tried to imitate the sounds of nature during performances where they're trying to show that there's a storm or danger or something like that forever. Like Mozart had metal thunder sheets that they would wave. There's a whole like wind machine where they would stretch some kind of animal skin on a drum and then
really.
Yeah, there's a big handle where you rotate it. I've seen some of the really old style stuff. Now they do it all with like digital sound stuff.
Yeah.
But 300 years ago, they were still trying to make wind and rain because that stuff is cool.
Yeah. The Verdi, that storm sequence in Rigoletto, I feel is so good at like imitating that sound. That is so much so that you actually believe it and buy into it because it's the way it.
Or like the beginning of Otello, right?
Oh my God! Yeah.
The ship almost foundering in rough water, like it's great. Yeah,
it's cool to see that something that was written. I forget when this came out. I think that particular thing was in the early thousands, and that it's still holding on to the traditional styles. And I also love the child singing "Oh da 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 da" when it comes in.
Yep,
it's really nice. All right, shifting gears to another gacha game, but one that is phenomenally varied in terms of its music is Arknights, and this is Awaken from Arknights. Okay. And it's actually become one of my absolute favorite pieces of music, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Cool. Think like modern Sondheim. It's written by Adam Gubman, who's a fantastic composer.
Oceans rushing, waters deep, regrets of mothers, daughters, serpents to cast adrift, a ghost ship sinking up there, so dreaming to sleep till fall on a safe shore.
Holding a paper while building a dam, they are flooding circuits to find who I am. Make a list, write it down in time. Sometimes we need it all, sometimes resign to a world where the center is never aligned. Make a move, take it back, it's mine. Gather raindrops and filling the ocean up.
Take every part of me, take it all and
put it together like building a boat.
Cheers as the horns resound.
Tangles of those who drown, carrying myself out. Find the break, water warm, keep it calm, be afraid to rattle the cage.
Take a risk, take a dive, take it down.
Suddenly surrender, take back everything. From the open shore I will learn to fly, soaring past the great divide. Voices that surface seem to call out all the lies. Is it still a sin if I let them in? Is it sail to calmer tide? I'll awaken what's asleep inside. ecstasy. Sights and sounds are forgotten and clear. Ships boast golden rings. Fantasy breaking me. From the open shore I will learn to fly, soaring past the great divide. Voices at surface seem to call out all the lies. Is it still a sin if I felt that thin as they sail to polar tides? Oh, I'll awaken what's asleep inside. From the open shore I have learned to fly, soaring past the great divide. Voices that surface seem to call out all the lies. There's a hidden door on the ocean floor. Do these dreams belong to me? If it calls my name, am I awakening?
That's good fun. So like that chorus, that sort of like weird childish women's chorus that comes in, is that like a siren thing?
So this character, yes, I think so. This character is like a fish, and and
that's the full quote from this episode. This character's like a fish.
So, she's part of a group called the Abyssal Hunters, and it's kind of this like Lovecraftian. So I don't know if it's like her inner like psychology or like
it's like Lovecraft in Sondheim. It is.
Yeah.
It is amazing to hear that the influence of that kind of theater writing, like super wordy, super rhythmic, super hard to execute, like has made it into this world.
Yeah, I know. Because
it doesn't sound like Sondheim to me, but definitely like that's the composer.
Yeah,
that's the composer who writes that way. You know?
That like pitter patter aspect of it, you know.
Yeah, that also it demands such a high engagement of listening from you. It's definitely like the polar opposite of some of the like drone, heartbeat.
Yeah.
Like get you into a meditative space. This feels like Sweeney. Like listen.
Yeah.
You're gonna miss it.
Yeah. Tune in. I know.
Yeah.
It's fun. I wanted to share that with you because I've really fallen in love with it. It's such a nice piece.
Cool.
Okay, so three more, and Time Scar. Here it is. So we'll do this one. So this is called Time Scar from Chrono Cross. It is one second. It is a very, very, very beloved game and the sequel to one of the greatest role-playing games to come out, Chrono Trigger. This is called Chrono Cross, and it's very different from what we listened to, but it's actually the same composer. Sorry, Luna's hair in my mouth. It's the same composer. It's a normal experience for me. It's the same composer that we heard in that jazz battle theme that we heard earlier. Battle from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. This is the same composer, Yasunori Mitsuda. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on how different this. You'll hear what I mean.
Okay, I love that.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like the violin playing is so beautiful.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. But just like, again, just a really cool sound world. I love the way it starts. It's really like high, low, and middle with big space in between all of that.
Yeah.
But like really individual writing in the lines. Like you get this sense of like three individual personalities as opposed to like a gorgeous line with accompaniment. It really feels intertwining. And then like it tightens.
Shook, and then it goes.
And it does, and also like very sudden transitions.
Yeah.
Handle in a way that are surprising, but like in a way that's really visceral when it snaps into the rhythmic section the first time, but then when it stops and that big high solo is back just kind of over that empty space, you almost get the feeling of having like taken off.
Yeah.
You know? That's gorgeous.
It's a good one. Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad you like that one. I like that one a lot too. This is our penultimate track. This is Assassin's Creed 3 by Jesper
Assassin's
Kid.
Creed, I've heard of it.
Have you? Okay, yes.
Yes.
So, this is Ezio's Family. This song is beloved, and basically, in case you don't know the plot of Assassin's Creed, it's one of my favorite series. But essentially, it's actually a sci-fi story, but you enter into this thing called the Animus, and you end up in the memories of your ancestors. And so in this particular case, you are in the footsteps of Ezio Auditore di Firenze, and he is I forget what the relation is, but you go through his life as he becomes a part of the Assassins, and the Assassins versus the Templars. And so the Templars are all the way to the Pope. The Pope is a Templar, and it's complex. The Medici family is involved, and Leonardo da Vinci comes in at one point. It's very fun. And,
very Italian. I see the attraction.
Oh yeah, but there's also like Assassin's Creed 3, which takes place in colonial the United States. There's
okay. There are different like conspiracy stories.
Odyssey, you go to Greece, ancient Greece. We just did Valhalla, which was the Vikings. Anyway. What's your takeaway from that piece? Because obviously I know it super well, but I'm curious, like for a first time listener.
It's definitely like vibe, right? In contrast to what we heard before, where there's such individuality in different lines. This is more like just a vibe and a heartbeat and a mood setting situation. I bet I would get a lot more from knowing and experiencing the story, but definitely there's this sort of like it seems to be giving this. It's giving, like just the sort of heaviness and repeatability of history. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of what you said about a game where you're like in the dreams of your ancestors. There's this like sort of time marching on at this unchanging pace. And every now and then you've got like an individual voice soaring off over that, or the whole thing stops for a much more intimate statement of the same sort of ba, 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 and harmonic progression. So that seems to say like, here's this big story and here's like my little part of it.
Yeah.
It's painting a pretty big mood with really, really simple materials.
Yeah. And it obviously is very like, it is sort of minimalist in its repetitive tone quality. But yeah, no, I mean, you hit the themes pretty much spot on. I mean, there's murder that happens here and loss and sort of like discovery of self. And yeah. Well, I suppose before we do our last song here, Baba Yetu, which if I recall correctly,
this is the Grammy winner, you said.
Yeah, so Baba Yetu won the Grammy. So Baba Yetu was nominated, it's in Swahili for Our Father, is the theme song for the 2005 video game Civilization 4. It was composed by Christopher Tin, and it won the Grammy in February of 2011. And it was the first piece of video game music, best arrangement, instrumental, and vocals. And I believe it was the first piece composed for a video game to be nominated and win a Grammy. But so before we go, I was curious, like, what has anything changed for you in the last couple weeks since the last time we met? And also, did hearing these tracks, has it changed your perspective even further, or how have you come away from listening to more of these tunes?
I remain really interested in I mean, I'm not going to start playing video games. I should make that clear. Like it's
no one expects that.
It's too late. But I'm loving just the pleasure of hearing new things that I've never heard before. Like that's a pleasure no matter what the genre is.
Yeah.
And I'm really struck by just meeting fans. I mean, like interacting even just, in a comment section, or hearing what people have to say about our conversation. Just a chance to interact with people who have loved music for a long time and are invested in it.
Yeah.
Like when I look at some of the comments, when I looked at comments from our last video, I loved how people were correcting you. That's very classical music, right? Yeah. that is definitely a classical music thread. Like, I loved your concert, and why didn't you play this?
Yeah.
but that comes from, the reason people say that is because like they're invested in the thing. Like they're essentially saying, I like you, I like your voice, I like your art. Please talk about this thing that I care about. And then you find out that people are invested in story. They're invested in their engagement. The reason they love a piece of music is because they sat with it and not just listened to it, but like that seems an important component too. Not just listened passively, but like we're engaged. Doing a thing.
Yeah.
I talked about that some. I react the most viscerally to scores that have a lot of piano in them. And like I can imagine myself playing on that bench. Like interacting with a string quartet, like the satisfaction of playing that. So video game experience seems very much like theater, except it's interesting. The listener is literally physically active in the middle of that story. Like that's, I think there's things that theater has to learn from that as theater becomes more interactive in sort of a less technologically based and more communally based kind of way. And yet, I say more communally based, there are tons of communal gaming experiences online, right? I've got news, they've played Fortnite.
Well, that's funny. It's true though that I think you can't remove the interactivity aspect of it is what makes it, I think, a more ingrained experience musically, where someone may come away from an opera and say, wow, that was really profound, but the act of doing something, and like when the stakes, when your back is up against the wall and you were able to overcome that difficulty while hearing a particular set of tunes, that's what I think elevates the experience and makes it so that it sticks with them for a very long time.
And what chatting with you, like having the chance to listen with you and learn stuff and talk with you comes at a time where this conversation is part of multiple conversations that I'm involved with about education of artists, training of artists, how we get ready for whatever it is that music and performance and composition is going to look like over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
As usual, our technology, the stuff that we make is ahead of our ability to shift like culturally as big groups of people.
Sorry.
I know, it's so adorable.
She wants to be a part.
She's like, you've been at it long enough, Dad. Come on.
She's like, it's been 2 hours, Dad. Come on.
Yeah. It's time to play with me. But I mean, I think we have so much to learn from each other, and most of, maybe not most, but a lot of energy in different camps has been over my lifetime spent staking out our boundaries.
Yeah.
In classical music, like here's how we're not jazz, here's how we're not in the virtual space, but Western classical, the Western European classical, whatever, however we're trying to, define ourselves. It's not the only group of people who have been trying to do that. And once we stop talking about what we're not and talking about what we are, and talking about what we have in common, like that's the beginning baby step in maybe a big conversation about like how do we who love music and care about creating it and listening to it, what are the things that we can make?
Right.
How do we get ready to make it?
Yeah. It's certainly it's a very interesting topic, and I'm glad that listening to these tunes and listening to new things has sort of helped sort of continue to propel that conversation forward. Was there a track so far that you were really impressed by?
I loved all of the stuff today. The ones where the writing is more like based on acoustic writing, and especially where there's piano, and I can viscerally imagine myself participating. Yeah. Like those are the things that I immediately respond to the most.
Yeah, of
for
course.
Sure. Yeah,
of course. Well, that's a great segue into, so this may or may not be copyright friendly. So if it isn't, then go check out the full video on Marco Meatball VODs. And if it is, well, we're going to listen to Baba Yetu. And speaking of organic, and
will you tell me one thing before we do Baba Yetu?
Yeah.
What does VOD mean?
Oh, VOD is video on demand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, video on demand. Marco Meatball VODs.
I was like, why isn't it vids?
Yeah, VODs, video on demand.
This is secret language of the youngs. I have to know.
Baba yetu yetu ye mbinguni yetu yetu amina Baba yetu yetu ye jina lako litukuzwe. Baba yetu yetu ye mbinguni yetu yetu
God.
Tukalota kula chetu, tunacheuta kusamehe makosa yetu. Hey, kama nasi tunaweza walitukosea, usituti katika na jibu lakini usokwe na yule muamue milele. Leo chakula chetu tunachohitaji kusamehe makosa yetu. Kwa nasi tunabewa sana waliotukosea, usituti katika na jibu lakini usokwe na yule muamue milele.
Well, give me a giant masked choir, and I'm like, sign me up.
I love Chris's writing. It's so romantic and so emotional, and he really
super romantic, super joyous.
He wears his heart on his sleeve big time, and he would tell you the same. And it's just it's a great piece.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and it's wonderful to watch like a giant group of people performing it, and like half the audience singing along.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, like
it can't get better than that, and it's great. I'm glad I could share that with you. Well, of course, Kathy, thank you so much again for coming back on and being a part of this. I think we've really covered. It'll be a little bit, so I'm sure some people will be like, "Well, do this next time." So it'll probably be a little bit before we see you again. But I really appreciate you coming on, and you're so open-minded, and it's really. It's a pleasure to.
This is totally fun. It's totally fun to learn about this whole great world of music, and it's a total pleasure to talk to you. You're such a knowledgeable and like open-hearted fan, but also expert. And plus, you have Luna.
Yeah, I know. I really appreciate that. And thanks everybody for checking this out. Feel free to subscribe, do all that good stuff. And I'm sure we'll have Kathy back again too. So thanks so much. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Everybody.